Most good gaming graphics cards start over $200, but can this GPU fix that problem?
Coming in at $150, this new RX 5600 non-XT aims to be one of the best budget GPUs you could buy new on Amazon right now, but is it actually any good? And especially because of that name, we're a little bit suspicious. We're about to find out after a word from today's sponsor.
Is the RX 5600 worth it in 2024? Honestly, I don't know. You'll have to watch the video to find out. But what I do know is that Jawa.gg is worth checking out if you're interested in the best deals on computer hardware. Jawa.gg is an online marketplace full of amazing deals on gaming PCs, components, and even peripherals. Shopping for a used graphics card is always stressful, since you can't really be sure what it was used for or even if the price is fair. Lucky for you, Jawa backs their expert community and gives you the confidence you need to buy from fellow gamers with zero scalping or scamming. And hey, maybe you're not in the market to buy anything, but if you're a casual upgrader of some spare parts to sell, or you're looking to start a PC flipping side hustle, selling on Jawa is super easy. Jawa's selling fees are among the lowest in the biz, and you can join their ranks of successful sellers being backed by an amazing community. Jawa will even purchase GPUs directly from customers. They offer honest pricing, free shipping, and no hidden fees. This makes them one of the easiest possible solutions for selling a GPU. If you're interested in buying or selling on the best online marketplace for computer hardware, check out Jawa.gg today, or you can head over to Jawa.gg/sell-GPU to get started on selling your GPU today. Big thanks to Jawa for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's get back to it.
Matt has been using the Amazon account again and found a RX 5600, which is an AMD graphics card that was a pretty solid card. It's a card that came out a few years ago now, and clearly this is not MSI or XFX or any of those name right companies. This is Vandossi, which is a first for me, but it has a really cool design in the front with the dragon. As you can see, the card itself is a little more plain Jane, but at the end of the day, it does appear that it's a real 5600.
And that is a card that was OEM only, meaning you couldn't buy it off the shelves when it originally came out. It was really only designated for pre-builds, but now people like this company, Vandossi, are finding these cards probably just in dead stock, putting new coolers on them and selling them for decent prices at $150. Now, we reviewed a ton of these cards on Amazon. These cards tend to come and go, so if you want to see the most up-to-date availability of this card, check the link down below. It's a affiliate link. It will help us out. But we're here to test it today. For $150, does this beat something like a 6500 XT or like an ARC A380? Is this a good option? Well, let's talk about the specs and dive into it.
What specs you got?
Surprisingly, normally I pull up a third-party source for the specs of the graphics card themselves, but this company actually gives us the full specs. It's a Navi 10 GPU. It is a PCI 4.0 by 16 card with 6 gigs of DDR6 memory. It also comes clocked at 1750 megahertz and has a base clock of 1575 megahertz with a boost of 1620 megahertz. And yeah, $150. They do say to use the RX 5600 XT driver, because if you go on AMD's website, there isn't an RX 5600 non-XT driver. You just install the XT one and it works just the same. They probably just did that to, well, make it easier for OEM only, and I don't think AMD really wants these to exist. So not really sure how long they're gonna last, but we're gonna test it in our beautiful test bench and see if for $150 it's a good buy.
So to go over the parts for the test bench, we have the Ryzen 7 7700X 8-core 16-thread processor. And cooling that CPU, we are using the Deepcool Assassin 4 in white. We have a B650 ROG Strix gaming Wi-Fi motherboard, 32 gigs of Corsair Vengeance DDR5 at 6000 megahertz, a 4 terabyte Lexar Gen 4 NVMe SSD. We're powering this whole system with the PX1200 GWH from Deepcool, and the case is the Deepcool CH560 Digital. So now that we have talked about the graphics card, we talked about the test bench, we are going to take this over to our test bench and test it on the test bench.
Test bench, test bench, test bench.
Alright gamers, now that we have this very strange RX 5600 on our test bench, let's see if it's worth the $150 price point. The games we decided to test are as follows. We have Call of Duty Warzone, Halo Infinite, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Spider-Man Miles Morales, Cyberpunk, and of course we had to end things off with Fortnite. Now first up in Warzone 3.0 on balanced settings at 1080p with no FSR upscaling, we had an average of 90 plus FPS with a few dips into the 60s, but overall it was a very smooth experience. We did notice when we do respawn in resurgence mode, the frame rate tanks for like a brief second and then comes right back up to the high 80s, low 90s, and overall is a smooth experience. The GPU is at 100%, so we're definitely bottlenecked by that GPU, but it's cool to see with a competent CPU. That's the big thing to keep in mind here, is with these higher end games, you still are going to need a competent CPU. It's going to play games like Warzone at 1080p balanced settings, which is basically a medium preset, at a very respectable 90 plus FPS, and you could throw FSR on if you want to if you want to get a high refresh rate like 120 Hz at 1080p. For a $150 graphics card right now, that's pretty dang good. And of course, stay tuned because we will be talking about what CPU we do recommend you pair with this graphics card if you do pick it up for a new PC build, and there's really a lot of options you can go with. Next up is Halo Infinite at 1080p on the medium preset, and we got an average of 70 to 80 FPS with a few dips into the 60s. Overall, a pretty smooth experience. This game is a very demanding esports shooter that definitely pulled a lot of power from this system, which definitely used this RX 5600 to its limits, 99% usage across the board, and overall we got a playable experience. We didn't push too far past the 6 gigs of VRAM that this graphics card comes with, which I think is a big selling point over some of the other cards on the market at this price point, like the RX 6500 XT that you can buy new for around the same price. That only has 4 gigs of VRAM. This one having 6 is definitely helping us out in these newer games. And also when you compare this card to something like the RTX 3056 gig, this is a much more powerful graphics card, and playing AAA titles at 60 plus FPS and sometimes into 100s, as you can see in Halo, shows that it's a really capable GPU, and at $150, it's looking very competitive so far. Now, in terms of the CPUs I would pair with this GPU, I'd be looking somewhere like the i3 12100, I'll be looking at the Ryzen 5 5500 or 5600, or if you're wanting to go on the Intel side of things, the i5 12400 would be a great option as well. But also don't forget, on the used market, the Ryzen 5 3600 is a really good bang for buck, especially on those AliExpress combos you can get with the CPU and motherboard. You can pick those up for a really good price and build a PC for around $350 to $400 with this graphics card, no problem. Now let's dive into a game that's absolutely going to tank this graphics card, Star Wars Jedi Survivor 1080p low settings, and to my surprise, we actually got 60 plus FPS. I will say I do not remember low settings looking this bad. It's not a pretty picture, but on low settings 1080p, we easily got 60 FPS. It felt relatively smooth, and it's cool to see that with a $150 graphics card, we can play this game that was pretty much taking these really high-end GPUs to their knees and causing it to be an unplayable experience. But even without FSR, we're getting 60 FPS in this game, and that's definitely very impressive. Now let's dive into Spider-Man Miles Morales at 1080p high settings. Once again, no FSR here. We ended up getting 80 to 90 FPS on average, but we did notice that the CPU was creeping into the 45 to 50% range, and that is a Ryzen 7 7700X. So very important you pair it with a competent CPU. Expect a little bit less performance, especially if you go with like an i3 12100 recommendation, with that only being a 4-core 8-thread versus the 8-core 16-thread we're using here, but it still should get 60 plus FPS no problems, even with a budget CPU like that. Now let's run Cyberpunk, a super demanding benchmark. 1080p high settings with no FSR. We got an average of 56 FPS, a minimum of 46, and overall a decent experience. I wouldn't normally run high. As you can see from all the other benchmarks we tested, we were going 1080p medium settings instead of 1080p high settings. But if you do want to stretch into high settings, you can get close to 60 FPS in a game like Cyberpunk, but just know, medium settings, you'll have no problems getting 60 plus FPS. In terms of power draw with this graphics card, we saw an average of about 140 to 145 watts pulled, which isn't too bad. You'd be happy with a 500 watt power supply or greater, depending on the CPU you pair with. If you go with any of the recommendations we mentioned at the beginning of this video, you'll have no problems with a 500 watt or even sometimes a 450 watt power supply with this graphics card. But on the safe side, I would look for a 500 to 600 watt power supply. And last, of course, we had to test Fortnite 1080p DX12 on performance settings, far view distance, everything else on low, and we got an average of 150 plus FPS. One thing I have to mention once again, even though we are running DX12, which does put that GPU to pretty much 100% under full load, it's always going to be a CPU game when it comes to Fortnite. So again, get a good CPU, pair with this GPU, and you'll have a really good high refresh rate Fortnite experience. Just browsing on Amazon right now for graphics cards around the $100 to $150 mark, all you're really going to get are stuff like the RX 5500 for $129 from AcerX, or you're going to go with something like a 6500 XT, and this card comes in really good at $149 with a pretty clean design, good temperature profile, and all in all, a interesting card that makes this budget sector on Amazon look much more appealing. Yes, obviously you spend a little bit more money, you could get a newer graphics card like the RX 6600, which for most people spending the extra $50 would be worth it, but we're talking about the $100 price point. Spending just $10 more, especially those willing to go used, will deliver way more bang for the buck upgrades versus when you get to the $200, $300, $400, $500 mark. But all in all, I think this is a good buy. Buy it on Amazon, you can get a decent return policy if you get a dud in the mail, and overall, I think for the price, it's pretty good. Let's look at this graphics card, and let's bring Jackson back in here to wrap this video up real quick.
Alright guys, well, we just got done testing this graphics card and it worked pretty well. I mean, the nice part is no Franken drivers or anything crazy like that. These are legit drivers that you will be able to update on your computer for hopefully years to come, and it performed just like an RX 5600 should.
And when we're talking about the other new cards on the market right now that you could buy on Amazon, 6500 XT is around the same price point, and I would definitely take this card over that in terms of its raw performance. Now, this thing doesn't touch the value of the used market. You can get way better GPUs for less on the used market, but we're talking about cards you could buy new on Amazon, which for some people is the only way you want to buy a graphics card. And for most people, this might be an option you should consider. So if you want to buy this graphics card, check that link down below. It will be an affiliate link. It will help us out. Let us know what you think of the Van Dostie graphics card in the comments down below. And yeah, all in all, the name is a little goofy, but the performance is definitely very solid.
So as always, we hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, check out our other two YouTube channels and also our twitch.tv/ToastyBros. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
And we'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.
This Van Dostie graphics card could be yours at PCBros.tech instead of one of our gaming PCs.
PCBros.tech, you can buy a gaming PC, a gaming laptop, or so much more. And no matter what it is, it comes with a 1-year warranty to give you peace of mind when buying a PC today. Use code ToastyBros2 and check out to save 2% of your next purchase. See you guys later. Goodbye.